Politics, for me, that's the art of getting it done. Now, before we get into that, I would like to introduce you all to my happy place. I'm not sure if you could hear the sirens in the background. That's not me speeding on the highway. We're actually responding in an ambulance to a patient. So this right here, that's my happy place, you know. And just a couple of weeks after this picture was taken, I got the offer to get an internship for 2 weeks in the German federal parliament in health politics. So I took that. I changed suits from the orange pants to the blue suit. And apparently they liked the blue suit so much that they offered me a job. And that's how I became a health policy advisor for 2 weeks in the German federal parliament. Now, I never wanted to go into politics, you know. By heart, I'm always an emergency physician. So now I'm back working in emergency medicine, but there's a lot of skills, a lot of tricks of the trade, you know, that I took with me, a lot of experiences. And I use that still every day in the emergency department now. That's what we're going to talk about now. So 3 things that I've selected for you. The first one is how to become articulate. The second one is how to build a structure to get things done. And the third one is how to navigate to progress. Becoming articulate, that's probably the most important point that I'm going to make here. You see, politicians have mastered this, and becoming articulate, that's really in the TikTok era, where the general public seems to have adopted the attention span of every emergency physician. It's becoming more and more crucial. So there's 2 main things that politicians do really, really nicely. The first one is that they use frames. You know, you can look at the same issue from different angles, and people do that, and what politicians can do very well is that they adjust their frame, how they frame an issue or an idea that they have, depending on the target audience. Now, we have the same thing in the emergency department every day as well. Let's say we're in an emergency department, you're the mother of a son, and the son just got transferred to my ED. He was in a car accident, I'm really sorry about that. And now you're asking me how your son is doing.
And how is he, please?
You know, your son, the test results, they came back negative. And, you know, there was nothing abnormal in the physical exam, and you don't need to worry.
How is he?
Yeah. What were the words that she just heard? You know, like, I'm very analytical at the moment, and we all are as emergency physicians, but she's very emotional. What are the words that she heard? Abnormal, worry, negative, exactly. So I communicated the information, but what was the subtext? You know, people in emotionally challenging situations, or when there's like a whole nation in crisis, politicians, they take care to use specific words that in the subtext communicate what they actually want to say. Now, I've always wondered, you've probably seen politicians talk on TV in interviews, and sometimes they look like robots. You ever notice that? I've always wondered why. Now I know why, because they take 100% of their brain's capacity to just think about the words that they're going to say next. Because the press is going to quote them in text form, right? So it's really important what words they choose. Now I could come back to you and I could say, well, he's stable at the moment. Everything's in the green. How's that sound to you? I communicated the same information, but very different subtext. Next up, building a structure. You know, you can always firefight, but it's probably better if you build a sustainable solutions. How do we do that? Anybody here familiar with the Pareto principle, 80-20 rule? Hands up? Okay. That's not a lot, actually. That's interesting. So the 80-20 rule, Pareto principle, 20% of your efforts generate 80% of your outcome. And that actually seems to be a law of nature. You can see that, I'm not joking, you can see that through all across different domains, from physics to chemistry to biology. You can even see it in big companies. 20% of employees, they generate 80% of revenue for any given company. So it's really important to identify those 20% of the most crucial tasks that are going to generate the most outcome. And we did that every day when I was working in the office. Every day we would have a big task list, and we would have to select those 20% that would be most important. How do you find those? Well, you can always label the tasks that you have. You can label them from importance and from urgency. And a lot of times, these 20%, these Pareto tasks, they are in the category that you defined as important tasks but non-urgent. So you push them away because you're chasing urgency. That's what we're used to in emergency medicine, right? The Pareto principle of emergency medicine, that's treat first what kills first. Yeah? But it's really important to take care of those important but non-urgent tasks, because that's where the nuggets are. And a lot of times those translate to building systems. Now, Deeming put it best. Those are all politicians' quotes coming up now. You've got to invest in your systems. You've got to build systems. In politics, that's crucial. If you don't invest in your systems, you're never going to build any sustainable solution. You're going to keep on firefighting all the time, and you're going to be stuck in reactive mode. You're like running on a treadmill all the time, but guess what? Motion doesn't equal progress. You've got to invest in your systems, and now a lot of people are going to say, well, I don't have the time for that, really. Well, let me tell you 3 things. First of all, there's probably no time because you're firefighting all the time, and you're firefighting all the time because your system needs improvement. The second one, there's no such thing as having no time. It's always a matter of prioritization. And thirdly, you waste years by not being able to waste hours. I love this quote. The more busy you are, the more important it gets to stop, pause, reflect, take a breath, see where you're going, and build those systems. If you just consider the law of incremental change, second, third order effects that are going to arise, compound interest, you're going to see that if you build your systems early, you're going to get exponential revenue, exponential outcomes. Now, next politician quote coming up. I love this one as well. Rahm Emanuel, I think he was a senior policy advisor or a senior chief of staff to Bill Clinton. Never let a good crisis go to waste. What do I mean by that? What's this symbol? It's a window, right? You see, in politics, the concept of policy windows is crucial. A policy window, that's a brief opportunity in time when maybe the chancellor or minister or public opinion, public media, they suddenly shine a spotlight on a very specific issue, and that gives you the opportunity to pass legislation around that issue. You have the same thing in the emergency department. It might be a change of leadership. Yeah, your department is more open to change, or it might be a sentinel event, a patient case that happened. Those are for you policy windows that you can use to push a new SOP, a new guideline, a new checklist that you might have created. Yeah. So you've got to recognize those policy windows, but more importantly, you've got to put in the work beforehand. You've got to be prepared. You've got to put in the work beforehand, put it in your desk drawer so that you're ready to take it out, put it on the table when it's needed. Lastly, how do you navigate to progress? Idealism versus pragmatism. You see, every time we would draw up a new piece of legislation, a legal text, we would send it out to the lawyers, and they would give it back to us, and usually in every second sentence or so, they would write, well, this is not clear enough, you need to specify this is ambiguous. Why? Because they don't want you to create legal loopholes. Now, if you look at a lot of SOPs, guidelines, checklists in medicine, sometimes they're not specific enough, and it creates loopholes. You can have a broad, abstract, great idea, but if you don't translate it into actionable steps, It's going to break down in practice. And it's also important to compromise on those details, because everybody can agree on some abstract level about an idea. You know, like in Germany, everybody can agree that that every citizen should have access to universal healthcare. I don't know about the United States, though. But in Germany, from the right wing to the left wing parties, everybody agrees on that. But when you get into the details, if you try to translate it into actionable steps, that's where the conflicts arise. But you need to work through that. You need to compromise on that, because otherwise your great idea that everybody was signing off on, it's never going to get done in practice. Secondly, people. If you want to get things done, you have to know how to navigate complex relationships with people. Let me tell you a story. So back when we were on the opposing side, as an opposition party, there was the official channel of, you know, if we had a great idea, we would write a legal text and we could put it into the parliament, in the parliamentary process. And what do you think were the chances of that getting through, of that becoming a law? What do you guys think? 0? 100%? 1%, okay. Yeah, very, very slim. Why? Opposition party, we didn't have the majority in parliament, so it usually would get thrown out. So what might we have done instead? You go grab a coffee with a member of another party, of a governing party. You slide them on a blank piece of paper your idea, translate it into actionable steps without your credentials on them. So they're gonna put it into the parliament as their own idea, and that's how we got things done. So when you come home from the conference, back to your hospital, you know, just go ahead, grab a coffee with that one person in hospital that makes your life most difficult. You might be surprised how the doors will open for you, or how a former US president put it. That's my favorite quote. Now, lastly, let me warn you of a slippery slope. During my time in health politics, that was during COVID when it first started out, I saw a lot of symbolic politics happening. Politicians would overreact, oversteer to certain events that would lead to improvements of the system, but further worse. And we have the same thing in emergency medicine as well. Yeah, you know, you get that dreaded phone call. You know that patient you saw on Tuesday? Well, apparently you missed a pulmonary embolism. So what could you do now? Symbolic politics. Every patient you see in the ED, you push through the CT scanner. You're never going to miss a PE again. Isn't that great? But well, yeah, costs, you know, overcrowding in the ED, radiation, and so on. That's not a sustainable solution. So we always have to separate the process from the outcome. Let me give you another quick example. So the last 3 years, I've been crossing the street. I never looked right or left, never got hit by a car. That a great outcome? Yeah, that a great process? Not so much. You always have to optimize the process, because that's going to get you a better probability for a good outcome. Now, as a final thought, I had the opportunity to work for 2 years in health politics, but I never had the attention of. I've always had the intention of becoming an okay or maybe good emergency physician. And now that I look from a frontline perspective back onto the system, it's clear as day for me that we have a responsibility for patients. And now you're going to say, well, Justus, I know that I have responsibility for my patients, but I mean responsibility on a societal level. You see, we as healthcare professionals, we are often the only ones in a position to be able to advocate for patient care, to be able to advocate for medicine. And we absolutely have to use that to influence those higher level decisions, because those higher level decisions, let it be in your department, on your hospital, your city, your state, your country on a federal level, they are going to impact patient care magnitudes greater than what we are managing every day. So as a final thought, act with intention, build your system. Medicine needs you.